What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the SEC College Football Betting Preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, my fellow BBOC co-host, Collin Wilson. It just means more, baby. Today we're talking SEC. 16 teams to go through. I think we'll split it up 8 and 8. If you want to hear Colin's thoughts on Arkansas, my thoughts on Kentucky, you'll have to wait until part 2, where we'll also summarize our picks, our favorite bets, all that good stuff at the end. If you missed the Big Ten preview, that is out now in 2 parts. Really enjoyed doing that with you, Colin. And then we also covered all of the Group of 6 conferences. We'll hit every single team. We have tomorrow, we'll be recording Big 12, and then the day after, we'll be recording ACC plus Independence, which is 20 teams now. The SEC feels light. It's only 16, which is crazy to say. But Colin, how goes it? Ready to talk some SEC ball and some hogs?
This is our conference, right? I mean, you've migrated into Kentucky long enough now. You're an SEC guy. I officially migrated over in 1992 when my team left the Southwest Conference. This is it. This is our home. And I think the one thing I got to say about the SEC is it's time to tighten things up a little bit, right? The Big Ten has won 3 in a row. You're pounding your chest. You're having, parades down the street. You're pretending like this is the best conference. It's not anymore. It's time to quit making hype videos like Signetti said. It's time to start proving why the 5 stars are the 5 stars. It's really, I can't believe how much this conference has cannibalized itself at the top, how much Alabama has fallen off from being elite since Kalen DeBoer has taken over. This conference needs to step up. So hopefully you and I we agreed on 4 teams out of the Big Ten. Let's start there. You think 4 teams out of this?
Yeah, ultimately, I think it's 4 for Notre Dame, ACC, Big 12, Group of 5. I think that's how it's going to play out. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think where the SEC has fallen off the most is just at the top, right? The top isn't the class of the country anymore. That's in the Big Ten plus Notre Dame. Now Georgia and Texas are, they're the 2 of those 8 teams that are less than 10 to 1 odds to win it all. But if you look, like, the depth is still there. This conference, I think, is still the cream of the crop when it comes to, like, the depth at the top. I mean, if I look just at my power ratings.
And what you mean by, let's be clear, I would take the middle and the bottom of this versus the Big Ten's middle and bottom, but I wouldn't take the upper tier, right?
Correct. Yeah, and that's why the national championships have not been flowing. If I look at my power ratings, I have 10 SEC teams in the top 20. And then if I go to the Big Ten, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I only have 6 Washington right on the cusp. So, the SEC is making up 10 of the top 20, but, you have Ohio State, Oregon, and the defending national champs at the top, which you probably would take over any team in the SEC right now. You could argue for Georgia or Texas, but that's where the difference is right now in the Big Ten. The playing field is leveled. NIL, the money. I mean, you look at all the spend. I mean, the SEC as a whole is still spending more than any other conference, but now the Big Ten has caught up, and some of those advantages that the top teams have had in the SEC are no longer there. But we'll see if they can get back to the promised land this year. All right, let's dive right in to the SEC. We'll go team by team. High level, you have Georgia and Texas are kind of the 2 co-favorites, and both, as I said, are 2 of the 8 teams that are below that 10 to 1 odds threshold to win the national title. And then there's a number of teams that are like in the 22 to 25 to 1 to win the national title range. And one of the shockers, it is still weird to see Alabama at like 25 to 1 and outside the top 10 in the AP poll, which was released today. And why is that weird? Well, it's weird because we haven't seen it in 18 years. That's the last time Alabama was ranked outside the top 10 in the preseason AP poll. There are some quarterback battles that we'll get to. There's 4 that are still ongoing: Vanderbilt,
Mhm.
Alabama, Arkansas, and Florida. And we'll start at the top. I guess we should mention, to keep a couple other high level notes. New head coaches. We have more than a quarter of the conference has new head coaches: Arkansas, Florida, Kentucky, LSU, obviously, and Auburn. But let's start at the top. Let's start with the favorites to win the conference, and that's Georgia. Georgia win total over 10.5 juiced to the under, or 9.5 very juiced to the over. They are minus 250 to make the playoff, sitting around 3-1 plus 280 ish to win the conference. This is a team, you'll see this stat, youngest team in college football by average age. I think 19.8 years is their average age. But that doesn't mean they don't have experience. This team has a ton of experience and continuity. In fact, this is the most experienced roster that Kirby Smart has ever had. Georgia ranks, I believe, 8th in returning production. Gunnar Stockton comes back at quarterback. It's a very experienced offensive line. Do have to replace Zachariah Branch, and they lost a couple offensive linemen to the NFL in Freeling and Morris. But this team just has, this is going to be a theme for Georgia moving forward, is they're always going to be on the younger side, right? Because Kirby still believes in building from the high school ranks, developing those players, and they have just, I think they have over 80 former blue chip recruits. And one of the quotes that Kirby said this offseason, and this kind of sums up his philosophy: we think that our investment in our player is better than your investment in your player that I would get from you in the portal. And that's pretty much sums up how he's building this team. Now, Georgia isn't, I think in today's new landscape, you're probably never going to get a just completely dominant, overwhelmingly dominant Georgia team, just because of the way that things work. Like, you're still going to lose guys to the NFL, and then you're not going to have as much great depth. But if there was any year where it looks like something close to the old Georgia, would be this year, because they're loaded with talent, they're loaded with experience, and we'll see if they can get over the hump of losing in the second round after a bye in the same location in each of the past 2 years. Colin, Georgia, I think you're fairly high on them. They seem like the surest thing in the SEC, especially when you consider they get, 5 of the bottom 7
Yep.
in the conference, so the schedule is pretty favorable. What are you seeing here with the Dogs?
No one's going to be able to run the ball like the Georgia Bulldogs between Stockton and Nate Frazier, and consider what they have on the offensive line led by Drew Bobo, right? Dontrell Glover in a guard, or tackle, and Green. And the returning offensive line snaps I had at 5,700. From a snap perspective and experience, that's like second in FBS. It is pretty amazing what they have coming back on offense. Now, they might not have the pass catchers that we're used to, right? The Zachariah Branches, the Colby Youngs, the guys that we know that can fly and get hit downfield, the Pickens, right?
Yeah,
Where is that?
that's probably one of the biggest questions on the team is, the offensive line has to be better run blocking. You got a
Right.
couple sophomores that kept coming back that played last year. You mentioned Bobo, who got hurt. His injury was big at the end of last year. But, you lose Branch, you lose Bell as a free agent. Young got drafted. So you look at the wide receivers, and it's not an area where Georgia really attacked through the portal. They do bring in Isaiah Canyon from Georgia Tech, who
Yep.
might be able to provide a spark downfield. You have Humphreys back, but I think in order for Georgia to reach its ceiling, and I mean like win the national title, they're going to need a more explosive passing attack, which means they're going to need some of these younger receivers to step up, whether it's Prothrow, Taylor, White, Helton, some of the, because the tight end room is loaded, and, Stockton is going to be reliable. And by the way, they have a decent backup. So it's like, if they have to lose Stockton for a few games, they still should be fine, and most likely getting to the SEC championship, where they're basically even money. But that's probably the key to, like, does Georgia win a national title or not, or are they in that conversation? is the receiving room. Can they unlock some of those young guys?
Yeah, because if they come up against a tough rush defense, it'll at least put a stop in the amount of explosive plays. One thing that will continue for Georgia, they finished 7th in offensive finishing drives. That's what is your points per attempt on drives past the 40-yard line. That's just the nature of Stockton, this offensive line, in the running game. Like, they're going to be able to stick it in every time. They're going to get touchdowns, not field goals. Defensively, there's they dipped into the portal for some depth. Gentry Williams from Oklahoma, Braylon Conley from USC, Khalil Barnes from Clemson, all American candidates coming. Ellis Robinson. KJ Bolden is still in the back. I think this is the best secondary in the SEC.
Yeah, you also didn't mention Kyron Jones, who got hurt last year, was playing really well. He's now running with the ones at safety, which means at nickel you could have Barnes and or Dinkins there. But people forgot about Kyron Jones because he got hurt. He's a thumper. And then you're next to a potential All-American in Bolden. You have Robinson at one corner as a potential All-American. The secondary, and then obviously it's Georgia, so the linebackers are loaded. It's always, I feel like that's just always going to be the case every year.
Right.
Maybe the defensive line needs can Griffin take that next step, right? Like the pass rush has to just be a little bit better. There's 5 stars all over. That would probably be the only question on defense, but this defense is going to be salty.
And this is one of the few teams in the nation where I don't really worry if they have a gap in a unit because of how they recruit, right? The type of blue chip 5 stars that they get, there could be a freshman out there that stands out. So I think the one thing that needs to be called out is how good Georgia is in the SEC and how much Kirby places emphasis on how important winning this league is. There's not a lot of coaches out there that are preaching that. Making the playoff, they know, could be the determination whether they keep a job. Making a bowl could determine whether they keep a job. Kirby talks about winning SEC championships. And I knew that they had played in the last 5 SEC championship games. But what I didn't realize is if you throw out the pandemic of 2020, Georgia has played in the SEC championship game 8 consecutive years. To me, he has built a team and recruits to win the SEC. Whatever happens in the playoff, I'm not really sure that line of thinking is where he goes to build this team. I think he knows every coach. This was Nick Saban's star pupil. I don't care about all the offensive guys, the Lane Kiffins, the Sarkisians. This was Saban's star pupil and always was. And he's got all those guys figured out. They're in a group text, and Kirby's the king of that. All right? So 8 straight consecutive SEC championship games throughout the pandemic. You should throw out all your pandemic stats. I don't see how you're not playing SEC championship plus 280 with this watered down schedule. I mean, road games, Arkansas, South Carolina, I'm not worried, right? And what happens if they do
revenge against Ole Miss? They got Kirby revenge.
Oh, God. And yeah, Golding's going to get spanked. And the last thing is, like, what happens if they play Texas in the championship? Kirby owns Sark, owns him. So, SEC 2 plus 280.
Part of me, I'm thinking about either that or just taking plus money to make it. Is there like a world where Kirby says, all right, the last 2 years have ended in the same exact fashion, and maybe like we shouldn't go all out to win the SEC championship? Now they're going to try to win it, but I'm saying, like, if there's guys that are a little banged up, like, all right, let's hold them back. Let's not. I don't know.
Maybe that's how we got 8 overtimes against Georgia Tech a couple of years ago.
Yeah, but like they have the highest floor because of the stealing, because of Kirby, because of the returning experience, because of all the talent and the schedule compared to, I think, the 3 best teams in the SEC. See if you agree.
Okay.
Or Georgia, just power ratings wise, Georgia, Texas, and Oklahoma.
Ooh. I think the third best. I like Oklahoma, but I think the third best team is a team you've been hot on the last 2 years. So we'll get to them.
Well, I have Texas, Georgia, and Oklahoma.
Because it might be the team that you've been hot on. Now I'm hot on them.
No, we're going to argue about that team. My 4th. Hold on, let me pull it up. Something pretty crazy is that I have. My 4th is Ole Miss and LSU, and I have them exactly tied in power ratings, which is pretty funny. And like they both had the number 1 and number 2 portal classes. A lot of similarities between Lane and his old team. Well, now we're gonna. I know the team you're talking about, Texas A&M. We're gonna argue to the death about Texas A&M.
Oh
I'm
boy.
super low on them this year. And I know you're high on them
Yep.
because in our document, right before I pull it up and look to see what Colin puts in, just if it's over, under, future, I see he has over, excuse me, for A&M, and under is one of my favorite bets. We'll get to that. The one thing I wish Kirby would do, by the way, before we move on from Georgia, like to go to the next level, like I wish he would have hired Buster Faulkner. Like Bobo is good. He defends Bobo to the death, but like Faulkner, I think just oh man, that would have been sexy. But we'll get to Florida. All right, let's move on to we'll call them the co-favorites, the Texas Longhorns. They're ranked 5th in the AP preseason poll. Their win total is sitting at 9.5, juice to the under. Yet they're plus 330 to win the SEC, minus 175 to make the college football playoffs. So you say 9.5, juice to the under. With this Texas team that brings back Arch Manning, that is top 10 in returning production, like Georgia, that is bringing in slam dunk portal classes, slam dunk recruiting halls every single year. Why is their win total 9.5 juice to the under? Well, the schedule.
And Sark is chirping. I mean, like he's confident enough to be chirping.
Yeah, Chirp is Sark is putting a bullseye on his back for sure. But the schedule's brutal. You could argue it's the toughest in the nation. You know, in non-con, you play Ohio State. You play Oklahoma on a neutral. You go to LSU. You go to Texas A&M. You play Ole Miss. I mean, the schedule is vicious from start to finish. I mean, just having a 9-game SEC schedule plus Ohio State, that's pretty tough.
Well, that UTSA spot ain't. I mean, it's not like they're going to lose that game, but that's not pretty either between Ohio State and Tennessee.
Yeah, but I will say last year they had to play Ohio State and Georgia on the road. Mm-hmm. So at least there's no Georgia this year, and they get Ohio State at home. So if you want to put a positive spin on it, that's the look. But Arch Manning comes back, definitely showed improvement in the second half of last year. I mean, he was atrocious to start the year. Sark, I mean, they have as much money as anyone at Texas. They added 10 Power 4 starters. Their offensive line was an issue last year. There's a lot of injuries, so they were rotating a lot. And they do lose one to the NFL in the 6th round, but they bring back a ton of experience. They add a couple of starters from the portal. I think Siani is going to be good for them. Even Hudson just got a waiver for him to play. He might not even start on the interior. It might be like Seymour from Western Kentucky. You're going to have Baker moving to right guard from tackle to guard, which I think is a smart move. That's a much better fit. Yep. Gooseby back at left tackle. He's getting first-round buzz. And
he is battle tested. He was thrown in the fire 2 years ago in the playoff. So
yeah, and then you add, Cam Coleman from Auburn, an absolute stud who I think is going to help their red zone issues, right? Just a go-to big target on the outside, in addition to Arch's legs. And then your backfield is loaded with Smothers and Brown, just a dynamic 1-2 punch. So you look at this team, I think they upgraded on the offensive line. They upgraded at wide receiver. They upgraded at running back. And then you have a second year of Arch. Defensively, there are a little bit more questions. Will Muschamp's going to take over the defense. So you're going to see a shift in philosophy. It's going to be much more aggressive. You're going to see a lot more press. It's going to be a philosophical change on that side of the ball, which is what I think Sark was looking for. My biggest question on that side of the ball is the secondary. I mean, you lose Taff at safety, who was drafted. You lose Muhammad, who was drafted. You lose another corner who's an NFL free agent. And you bring in Bo Masco from Rutgers. You need him to be your number one in like an aggressive defense, because I trust McDonald at safety, but like who else are you like, this guy's a slam dunk? Like is McDonald, he might be a bust. And there's a lot of questions in that secondary, which might ultimately hold this Texas team back, but this team is obviously loaded. What are you seeing with Sark and the Horns?
Well, if the secondary does give up an explosive pass for a touchdown, that means they get to kick off to Ryan Niblett, who likes to have special teams touchdowns from punting, which allows us to talk about Jeff Banks and the monkey on the pole. So I love this team. It's endless. Muschamp coming back, like just how aggressive they're going to be on defense, I think is really going to help them out instead of that Kwiatkowski's like cover heavy scheme that he was running. Now you can actually kind of get in their face and jab them at the line of scrimmage. And I think that really points to the fourth game against Tennessee. That's how you beat Heupel's defense, or I'm sorry, Heupel's offense, is you got to jam them at the line of scrimmage and get them off their timing route. So if you want to know if Texas secondary is up to speed to win a national title, that Tennessee game is gonna tell me a lot. Not even the Ohio State game. I know they're gonna take shots, but Tennessee is a timing offense, so that one really plays out for me. Look, 19 portal additions, 24 freshmen coming in. Everybody's a blue chipper. Everybody gets a Porsche. Manning's last 6 games produced 24 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, committing just 2 turnover-worthy plays in that time. And that came to Georgia like in the second half of their game. So he really stepped up his play in the second half of the season. 170 rushing yards on design calls, 21 rushing attempts to go over 10 yards. He had 21 first downs just with his legs. That is sort of a cheat code on this offense. And really, there's not much I can add, not to say that this offense isn't elite. Hollywood Smothers, 3.8 yards after first contact. Rayleigh Brown, who we were chirping about all last year. We loved him so much at Arizona State. 55 missed tackles forced. Really, the questions come on the defensive side, because when you look at Cam Coleman highlights, I think that what's important about Cam Coleman and also the other wide receiver they got from Stanford, Emmett Mosley, like, if you look at their contested catch rate, it's well above 50%. That's what's important. Now Arch can just throw things up to 2 wide receivers who have a career of catching 60 to 70% of contested balls. That's a really big deal on 50-50 throws. So
Yeah, Cam Coleman's going to go from Jackson Arnold duck to Arch Manning. I mean, it's a
right.
It's a whole new world for him.
The star position on defense is going to be filled by Grayson Littleton. 6 PBUs, 2 INTs as a true freshman. That's a really big help. We'll see what he can do with that secondary. I've already taken Texas money line against Ohio State on the Big Ten podcast with the belief that Archer's going to get deep into that Ohio State secondary. Frankly, that's the point of attack for Julian Sain to hit Jeremiah Smith. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if the new offensive coordinator for Ohio State is going to attack that. I guess we'll see. So the play in the Big Ten was all ready to take Texas money line. So if I was going to do something else here, we're avoiding Kirby in league play. May have to face him in the SEC title game. I don't really want to take a wager on the SEC championship. But with wide receivers that are above 50% on a contested catch rate, an offensive line that's probably going to be the best in the SEC, Arch now has an elite run game behind him. And by the way, his legs are pretty good himself. This comes down to what we said in the very first pod, Stuck. It's Sark's red zone play calling. What can you do once you have drives that get past the 40? This team consistently fails on Stark's red zone play calling. Last year, they finished 88th in offensive finishing drives. That's every year, except for the year you had Bijan Robinson running the Wildcat. So I'm taking Texas to win the national title 8-1. They are my side-by-side piece with Oregon in the national title game. You get this kind of talent on offense and you don't make the national title game, I think the entire system needs to be questioned. Everything from top to bottom, from coordinators, assistant positions, how you're getting kids. With this talent that they have, if they are not in the national title game, it's a failure by Sark. And Sark has said it out loud. There's only one goal, and it's to win the national title. So it's not like I'm making up a high bar out of thin air for Texas. He's already set the bar.
Yeah, I think that this defense, this team reaching its ceiling, I think it's going to come down to the secondary. Learn a lot against Ohio State, learn a lot against Tennessee. The schedule is very difficult, so we're going to learn a lot throughout the year. Because I do like, Colin Simmons is going to shine in this defense. I also think Biles from Pitt is a perfect fit. Jeffrard from Arkansas, your boy, he's going to be the perfect nose, just with his big body to stick in there. I'm not completely sold on the. He's getting rave reviews. Juice Cryer from Florida State. Not completely sold on him, but their front seven should be very good. It's just the secondary. They're going to, like, what it comes down to is, like, can Bo Masco be a number one coming from Rutgers? I'm not, like, playing like press, and I not totally sold on that idea. So if that's the case, you're going to need some, and I'm not really sold on Derek Williams at safety from what we've seen over the past couple of years. So you trust McDonald, but like they're going to need some of these younger guys to really take the next step. You mentioned Littleton. There's Phillips and Black. Like those are the guys that I think are going to make or break Texas's ceiling and whether or not they can get to and/or win the national title.
I feel like that semifinal team that had Makuba in the back that Penix picked apart was less talented than this one, though. Just to be fair, right? Because
pure talent
secondary had issues.
Yeah, pure talent wise. How much is the impact of? Because I mean, this is like an underrated. It's hard to kind of measure, but Michael Taft's just like leadership and what he did on the back end was just so underappreciated. So losing him could end up being a big deal. And then, you had a couple reliable corners, but it's going to be a complete philosophical change on the Texas defense. Looking forward to watching them. For what it's worth, I project Texas at 9.51. So, like, I'm right on market. I project Georgia at 10.2, 10.25. So nothing for me win total wise on either. Don't mind looking at Georgia to get to and/or win the SEC, as you said. But let's move on to where you want to go next. Let's go. You want to go to Alabama? Yeah, they're Alabama. You were getting a lot of shit.
Hold on. I have to scroll on my page. It may take a few seconds.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Alabama win total 8.5, juiced slightly to the over. They are plus 150 to make the playoff, 25-1 to win the national title, 9-1 to win the SEC. They're coming off of a 10-2 regular season where they got fairly fortunate in some close games. This is year 3 of DeBoer, and it might be a make or break year for him. Are the pitchforks coming? If they don't go over this win total, you're looking at the recruiting class for 2027 does not look great. So where do we start with Alabama this year? It's a quarterback battle. Keelan Russell, Austin Mack. I think you have to have Russell win this at some point, if not right off the bat, because of his mobility, and I think he has the higher ceiling. And you need that mobility because there are major questions along the offensive line. Like
DeBoer said the other day about Austin Mack, familiarity is so important here. And I'm like, if it's so important, why is he just now, like, why didn't he win the job last year over Ty Simpson? It was a 3-way battle, remember? Like, yep. Go ahead, because I got problems. I got problems.
I think the defense, especially on the back end, is going to be very good. The secondary should be elite. You have 4 or 5 guys that, and you have 5 stars behind them. Sabb, Morgan, Hubbard, Brown. Like, their secondary is going to be salty.
Yeah,
there are more questions along the defensive front, but I trust this Alabama defense. All of the questions are on offense, and it starts with the offensive line. Additionally, there's some injuries like Deere, their running back, out. I was kind of looking forward to seeing Crowell, and maybe he could emerge in there. He's been out and injured the past week or so. And then a receiver that they were probably going to count on, Noah Rodgers, is out for the year. But the biggest question mark I have with this team is, and it's a younger team. I mean, they could start like 7 underclassmen on offense, but it's the offensive line. I mean,
worst unit on the team.
The offensive line was not great last year, yet, there was a first rounder, a 5th rounder, a tackle that went to Texas A&M, and another pair of guards who were signed by NFL teams. So you're talking, 4 offensive linemen from last year's teams are on NFL rosters. Another one went to Texas A&M. And by the way, the top 9 in snap counts on the offense last year are all either in the NFL or on Texas A&M. So you look at this offensive line. So what did Alabama do to address this? I mean, there's only 30 career FBS starts on this offensive line. 21 of them come from the projected starting right tackle, James, who had 9 of those 21 at Akron. And he was bad at Mississippi State. And then, you have maybe a battle at left guard between Sanders and Waldrop. Lloyd at left tackle, a Cal Poly center, and Delgado, and then Carroll at right guard. Like, this offensive line could be horrific, which means you're not solving the major, historically bad rushing offense that Alabama had last year. And then you're throwing all those issues in with a first-time starting quarterback. And then it could get ugly for this Alabama offense. So all the focus.
2,560 returning snaps. That includes the portal. That's 112th in FBS. Not starters, snaps.
Yeah, so you look at the schedule. They play 3 of the top 4, but also 5 of the bottom 6. So it's not an overly difficult SEC schedule, but they only do have 4 SEC home games. They do face a lot of mobile quarterbacks, which has been an issue for Alabama, as we know in the past. But you look at their road schedule is fairly manageable, right? You're at Mississippi State, you're at Kentucky, you're at Tennessee, you're at LSU, then at Vandy. If you have 5 SEC road games, that's getting UK, Mississippi State, and Vandy is pretty favorable. Although I think that Kentucky game is very tricky week 2, because you're not going to know what Kentucky and Will Stein is really going to do schematically, and there's just going to be a lot of surprises.
And you're thinking about Florida State.
Yep. So I will be looking to back Kentucky in that game. But you are super low on this Alabama team. You love the under. What are you seeing with the Tide this year? And this is a complete 180. Last year, this time, you're touting Bama to win it all, and now you're going under 8.5.
They made the playoff. I got so wrapped up in Keelan Russell. I thought he was going to. I thought at some point he would take over midseason. And Ty Simpson held on to the job, and then they whimpered out in the Rose Bowl. Then they whimpered out later on in the season with some weird games with OU, just box scores belonging to the winning team that shouldn't have won the game. It was a really strange season for them, and I think
they easily could have lost 4 or 5 games last year, like South Carolina, Auburn come to mind. Like those games easily could have went the other way.
Before I throw kerosene on this little fire we have on Alabama, my off-season power ratings, I took 2 points off for returning experience, which is minimal, which means they're just below average. And then I took 2 points off for second order win total. That's it. I took 4 points off the PR, and my win total is 6.7. Way below 8.5. Way below the SP plus of 8.3. Way below anybody in this world.
Yeah, I'm 8.2.
So I take 4. How is it I take only 4 power rating points away and I come up to 6.7? I've been doing this math for 15 years. Like that, this team was not great last year. You're just staring at the uniforms and thinking they're going to be fighting Nick Saban's. They're not. It's not working. So, Keelan Russell needs to be, by the way, he had 4 TDs in the spring game. If he hasn't won the job yet, I'm a little shocked. Or maybe they just, I don't know. I don't know what the hope is I got with Austin Mack, but Keelan Russell needs to be the guy because he's got legs and he's got an arm. But this running game, the reason I think I bought 8.5 like back in February, under 8.5 and plus money. Why? Because you didn't get any offensive linemen back and you didn't have a running game even with Jam Miller. I mean, it was atrocious how bad this team was running the ball. And so now you're going to need somebody that can sit back there, dodge edge rushers, and throw deep. And hopefully Ryan Williams-Coleman is back to his freshman self and doesn't have a busted up hip or whatever's going on. They can't run the ball. Who's got the rocket arm that's going to hit Ryan Williams-Coleman down the field? I mean, I don't have any complaints about the defense other than the linebacker unit got wiped, right? It got wiped. And that's who calls the defense, and that's who sets everybody up, right? So we can rant and rave about how great the secondary is, which it is. It's fantastic. Don't throw on them. But the linebacker unit got wiped.
Yeah, the linebacker room could be down a bit.
And look, Florida State's coming to Tuscaloosa off a bye in week 3. They could get beat. Where are the 4 losses? I think there's 6 potential games where they could get beat. They're going to be a 5-point dog to Georgia. They're going to be a dog at home to Texas A&M. They'll be a small favorite at home, but with this brand new linebackers, that's how.
No, they're at Tennessee. They're at Tennessee.
Okay, yeah, they're at Tennessee, but you need your linebackers in coverage against all the slants and the crossers. At LSU, back-to-back travel to Vandy. That's a coin flip game. The Iron Bowl, anything can happen.
Don't sleep on Kentucky week 2. And DeBoer is the king of losing as big favorite. He's done it so much at Alabama.
I am so tired of everyone else in our space that has a microphone that says no way in the history of Alabama they're only going to win just 8 games. Do some research, do some work. They got wiped. This isn't working. They can't run the ball. That under 8.5. It's still plus 100. If these injuries start to mount up, that'll take more money. So don't listen to everybody else and quit staring at the uniform. This team's in trouble. This program's in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason I'm at 8.2, so I lean under with you. And I think it's just going to be the offense line. People are talking about like their new offensive line coach, Clem. It's a curious hire. It's going to fix everything. Dude, look at the talent on the offensive line. I just don't see it.
I made Kentucky just 8.5-point dog. Like, I mean, they can win that game.
Yeah, especially the surprise factor. We've seen DeBoer on the road, and this Alabama team on the road consistently lose games that they shouldn't lose, especially early in the season. So
unless he's got his black hoodie on, it'll be fine.
So, it should be an interesting year in Tuscaloosa. A lot of pressure on DeBoer. All right, let's move on to another team that'll be interesting to watch. The LSU Go Tigers. Win total for LSU sitting at 8.5. Pretty much even money. They are 9-1 like Alabama to win the conference. Right around the same price as Alabama, plus 150 to make the playoff. It's the Lane Kiffin era. He brings his offensive coordinator with him, keeps defensive coordinator, your boy Baker, and he's the portal king. He's the number 1 portal class. I mean, you 11 former Power 4 transfer starters, plus a handful of all-conference group of 6 guys, and they crushed it recruiting with over 10 blue-chip recruits. This is a very, very new-ish roster. I mean, there's like 60 newcomers, 43 transfers, but the talent is undeniable. Like you just look across this roster, you bring in the number 1 tackle. You brought in Sam Levitt to play quarterback. The offensive line, and then you have wide receivers for days. The questions I still have with this team, number 1 is like how many times is Lane going to trip up, and are they going to be focused? That's always the case with a Lane team. But he does have it. Like, can they just win all the games on the road they're supposed to? Because they have a manageable road slate, right? Like that Ole Miss game is going to be an absolute zoo, and I guess at Tennessee too. Those are the old Lane stomping grounds. This is going to be a fascinating team.
You know, whatever happens at the Ole Miss game, the Tennessee fans are going to be like, we have to one-up that. Whether it's like French's mustard, golf balls, it doesn't matter. Like Tennessee fans will try to one-up what happens.
Yeah. But they get Arkansas and Kentucky on the road. There's no Georgia. They do face 3 of the top 5, but they're all at home in Tiger Stadium. So there's a lot of talent on this team. The questions I still have with them, I mean, they did lose 7 players on the defense to the NFL. They brought in a lot of talent to replace, like just a lot of experienced talent to replace those guys, and there's still a lot of blue chippers on this roster. The biggest questions I would still have are probably in the secondary. Like, I mean, losing a corner in the top 10, and then AJ Halsey, who I loved. People are raving about Ty Benefield from Boise. I'm not sure he's at the same caliber of as Halsey, but we'll see. But my biggest question is probably still the offensive line, but it's going to be better than last year because you have an NFL left tackle. Moore comes back at center. He'll be drafted. They bring in Ba from Maryland. It's like a high floor guard. People were always like, he didn't allow any sacks last year. I mean, no one did on Maryland. Maryland Maryland had gave up 2 sacks on the year. You have Davis at right tackle. He was horrendous last year. Him and Borderline are probably the 2 weak spots on this offense line, but it'll be better than last year. And plus, it's not Nussmeier with an injury, right? It's presumably a healthy Sam Levitt, and all reports are now that he's healthy and he can move and he's mobile, so that'll help. But is the running game going to be there to help out this passing attack? But it's a lane offense. It's going to be good. This team is uber talented. I mean, if you just mapped out the potential for NFL talent on a team, LSU's probably in the top 5. Win total 8.5. What are you seeing with the Tigers?
So I make the total exactly on, I believe, just a tad above at 9.1 with the juice. We're getting pretty close. And I think here's what I see with the team. 59% of this roster is brand new. And we can name off all the wide receivers that they brought in, but I think there's one that particularly needs to be called out, and it's Jackson Harris from Hawaii. Because on 73 targets, he had 2.8 yards per route run, caught 16 of 22 contested catches. That's what Sam Levitt needs. So they loaded up everywhere. Jordan Seaton from Colorado. I mean, getting him on the offensive line is just that's
potential first round draft pick. So
he should probably already be in the NFL. Prince Will, Umana Milan, I mean, coming in from Ole Miss, 51 pressures, 26 stops. That's basically solo tackles. They're loaded everywhere. I think the 4 SEC home games they're the biggest that they're going to have on their schedule. Texas A&M, Alabama, Texas. So, at least they have them coming to Baton Rouge. But the road slate is very manageable. Kentucky, Arkansas, Ole Miss is just going to be a zoo. I think you have to throw the numbers out there. We'll see if I kind of wonder if it's one of those situations where Ole Miss just hypes it up too much, and then after the first quarter, there's just no air in the stadium whatsoever. It'll be interesting to keep my eye on that. But like I said, I'll be quick here because my total is just above what the number is. It's a pass for me because, frankly, I'm not sure if they can win Texas A&M, Bama, or Texas. And if they lose those three, then you have to sweep the rest of the schedule. There's going to be a lane game, right? There's going to be a lane. This is still a coach that picked Austin Simmons to win the starting job last year. So,
yeah, I'm close to the market. I actually am 8.25-ish. So, I mean, I would slightly lean under, but this team is too talented. And, I think the defense is going to take a small step back. Gerald is the key, I think, on the defensive line. If he could take that next step, I think then that's going to do a lot. Gerald's he was a freshman last year. A lot of talent. I think he's one of the keys to the defense. But look, the defense is very talented. I think it'll take a small step back due to some of the losses in the secondary. Although, yeah, I mean, you have Pickett and Woodland back as your corners. It's a good place to start. But I do think they take a small step back. But the offense should take a big step forward because the offensive line is going to be better. You have a mobile quarterback who's not hurt. This is all assuming that Levitt is healthy. And then you have an embarrassment of riches at wide receiver. And it's a lane offense. They're always going to be good. And the running game, I think it can't be worse than last year. And by the way, it sounds like Dylan Jones might be the RB1, the Wisconsin transfer. He's getting runs with the ones, which should be interesting to watch. But yeah, this team, is there a game on this schedule where you're like, that's a loss? No. But that Lane might have 1 or 2 games where you don't expect that they might lose. But this is the team
Arkansas, if they're not making the playoff, like Arkansas.
Yeah, this is a team that you're going to Tennessee and to Arkansas after Texas at the end of the year. Yeah. And those are 2 teams with new quarterbacks, right? With a lot of change that you're going on the road there. Now, they could go the other way. I mean,
Arkansas will not quit they'll quit all the other seasons. They're not quitting year 1 on Silverfield.
Yep. So it should be an interesting year down in Baton Rouge. Nothing for me on LSU preseason. All right, let's move on let's talk. I guess we got to cover Ole Miss here because it's just a natural place to go next after talking Lane Kiffin. Ole Miss, off a magical run last year, almost made the national title. should have been pass interference. Win total 8.5, juice to the under, plus 950 to win the conference, plus 180, plus 170 to return to the college football playoff, 22-1 to win it all. Look, Ole Miss, they lose their coach in Lane Kiffin, and you are like, all right, he's going to just absolutely raid this roster, and Ole Miss is going to be in rough shape this year, probably going to lose Chambliss. No, not in as dire a shape as you would have presumed before, like, a day or two after they were eliminated in the college football playoff. They crushed the portal on the defensive side of the ball. They first of all, they brought a ton back on their defensive line, and they added a ton of dudes on the defensive side of the ball. This defense could be very, very good. I mean, adding a guy like Thomas from Baylor, Forelli from Cal at the linebacker room, you add 4 former starters in the secondary, and you already were, brought back 2 starting corners on the outside. Now, maybe
2-time All Big 12.
Yeah, and then you already were bringing back Perkins, Eccles, and Franklin from a very good defensive line. Now, your safeties were very good last year, so maybe you take a slight step back with like Aguero and Joseph and Denson. But this defense, I think, is going to be salty. The biggest questions I have on the offense, because one, the interior offensive line comes back. The tackles do not. And their tackles are both in the NFL. And the tackles that they are counting on to step up are very, very questionable. Very. I mean, Kern from LSU, he's not it. I'm sorry. I mean, he has talent. Maybe he reaches it this year, but not a believer. So I'm worried about the tackles. The pass catchers are good, but they're going to take a step back from last year, right? You bring in the Cuse guys, like you're going to have Cook in the slot, but you lost Wallace, you lost your tight end, right? You lost Stribling, who was drafted in the 2nd round. You lost Watkins to LSU. Wide receivers are good, but not as dominant as last year. So I think that this offensive machine, and there's no Lane Kiffin, and there's no Weiss any longer. Now, they hired John David Baker, who worked under Weiss and Kiffin before.
And he's going to keep the offense.
Yeah, keep the offense the same. It's a smart hire, but I do think it's like a downgrade from a play calling perspective and just that brain in the room. And look, Trinidad Chambliss was incredible last year. But everyone is just assuming that he's going to be incredible again. And the only thing I'll say is that so much of his success last year was throwing the ball deep. And I mean, if you look at his numbers last year, he was pretty much the greatest quarterback of all time when it came to throwing the ball deep. Intermediary, nah.
Better than Calandria? Better than Jaden Denegal?
Well, look, and there's a lot of variance in one season when a lot of your production, and there's no doubt, you can't doubt his talent, his scramble ability, his elusiveness, but there's a lot of variance when it comes to just relying on a lot of deep throws. And I'll get to a potential comparison here. But if you look at what Chambliss did last year, he had 19 big time throws to 2 turnover-worthy plays.
Average 20 yards.
Yeah, completed 55% of his passes, which is more than his intermediate range. And in the intermediate range, he had 3 big time throws to 5 turnover-worthy plays. He was flawless throwing the ball deep past 20 yards, 23 of 43, 820 yards, 5 touchdowns, 19 big time throws to 2 turnover plays. Well, the tackles are worse off. The wide receiver room isn't as good. And there's just a lot of variance in that. And your play caller, I think, is a little worse. Going into last year, do you know who was one of the greatest, who had some of the greatest deep ball numbers for a season that we've seen in recent years? Milroe was one. DJ Lagway, who was one of the top recruits, a lot higher, higher touted than, he was much more touted than, as far as pedigree, than Chambliss, who came from Ferris State. DJ Lagway, his deep ball and his numbers in his first year were pristine. Last year, fell off an absolute cliff, and now he's at Baylor. So it's not just an automatic given that Chambliss is going to be as dominant, and there's a chance that he falls off. What are you seeing with Ole Miss this year?
Project 7.2, under 7.5, plus 130 in the market. So it means I am spot on where they're at. I think you're going to need 5 losses to cash this ticket if you do want to go under. And I mean, I echo everything that you've said about the team. And I will throw in how much I love this defensive line, especially Eccles. I mean, when you get 39 pressures from an interior position, that's insane. Like, that's supposed to come from your edge, not from your interior. So the defense is absolutely going to cook, getting pressure and everything.
Yeah, defense is loaded.
Yeah, and we'll see.
And special teams are also very good.
Yeah, and Trinidad was excellent on the run last year too. Outside the pocket, can throw as good as anybody in the nation. So we'll see if he can keep that up. You need 5 losses on this schedule, and I mean, we could call them out. I mean, you're going to be a short dog hosting LSU, the Florida spot. Look, I can't find a game of the year. There's no way I'm not betting the Gators in week 4. I mean, after the LSU Ole Miss game, yeah, give me whoever they're playing. That's going to be Florida. Short fave on the road against Vandy. To me, you're taking a loss to Texas, Georgia, Oklahoma. So what's the one game this all pins on? To me, it pins on Louisville in the opener. And right now, Isaac Brown has minor strains and is not practicing. The running back for Louisville, so I can't handicap that game.
I love Louisville, and
he's not practicing. So I can't give an accurate assessment on the win total because Louisville might be missing their best player. So to me, it's a pass. Keep your eyes on Isaac Brown because I wanted that Louisville spot in week 1, but I can't without him. Not without him. No way.
Yeah, that's my first bet of the season was Louisville.
You've already got money down on it?
Yep.
Let's get him healthy.
Yeah, I'm hoping. Braum is the king of pulling off upsets, and he's the king of the early season. So, like, they could certainly drop that game. And then, I mean, I think the swing game of the year is going to be LSU at home week 3. If they take care of Ville, and then they beat, they're going to beat Charlotte. If they beat LSU week 3, they're 3-0. I think they go over. If they don't, I think they might go under.
They're not beating Florida. They're not beating
Florida. You're on to Florida. And then you're at Vandy after a bye, and Missouri should win those. But then the back half of the schedule, you got who I think are, you already played LSU and you're at Florida. The back half of the schedule, you have the 3 top teams to me in the SEC, and 2 of them on the road, at Texas, at Oklahoma, and Georgia at home. You should win the other 3, but if you drop 2 early, easily go 3-3 in the second half. And then you're looking at a 7-5 year. So that LSU game is a big swing.
Texas, Auburn, Georgia, Oklahoma, all in a row. No buys or anything. It's tough.
Yeah, if I had to, I'd go under. I project 7-7. So you got to pay to go under 8.5, but I still show a little bit of value. I was close, but didn't quite get there. Maybe I will. But good special teams might come in, really good special teams might come into play in some of the close games that could swing this. All right, let's move on to, I've been looking forward to this one. Let's move on to Texas A&M. Texas A&M win total 8.5, juice to the under. They're plus 1,100 to win the SEC, plus 185 to make the college football playoff, 25-1 to win it all. Now, the under has taken some money since I bet it, so the price is worse. I still show enough value to bet it. I project 7.62. I love this under. I've been high. I was super high on this team last year, had them to go to the college football playoff. I am completely off of the Aggies this year.
Cashing out at the table, huh? You're going to the cage, and you're done with your Aggies love.
I love Elko, but I'm all the way out on this team this year. Do you want to make your case first why you love them, or do you want to build off my case?
I mean, look, Mario Craver, 3.3 yards per route run. That's a known quantity. Marcel Reed returns, 26 big-time throws. 5 turnover-worthy plays came against South Carolina. That worries me on the schedule because they're playing South Carolina again. I don't know what they did defensively, but they really got into Reed. Reed ended the season with 6 interceptions in his last 3 FBS games, so I get a little bit worried about what the direction was at the end of the season for him. Hopefully it was just fatigue or maybe it was injury. But getting Craver back is a big deal. The portal provides a lot of experience at the edge position. Anto Saka came in from Northwestern. They're going to be 3-0 to start off. Missouri State, Arizona State, Kentucky, all at home before they play LSU. Other wins on this schedule: Arkansas, at Mizzou, Citadel. They're going to be TD faves against South Carolina and Tennessee. That's 8 games. That's 8 games I just rattled off. So once you get after that, you need a coin flip win at LSU, at Bama, at OU, or against Texas. I just need one of those to get to 9. So, where do I project them? 9.4. I'm over 8.5 here. They're getting one of those 3: at LSU, at Bama, at OU, and against Texas. And I think it's going to be at Bama.
They're losing at South Carolina, by the way. The only thing I don't like about this under is some of the scheduling spots and how it sets up, because they have a bye before going to South Carolina. It was major revenge. It was up 30-0 and lost. And they get LSU after the Ole Miss game. Now they have to go to LSU, but those are 2 good spots that could change, that could flip, road losses into wins. I don't like that. I like everything else about this under, and here's why. All right, so let's start on the offensive side of the ball. They lose Colin Klein, who I loved, and now you're going to have they have an internal hired offensive coordinator, their wide receiver coach, first-time play caller. Questions there. The offensive line, we talked about the Alabama offensive line. The offensive line last year is one of the reasons that I bet Texas A&M to make the college football playoff last year. They had one of the best offensive lines in the country, returning so much experience. They had 156 returning starts last year. They lose 4 starters who were all drafted to the NFL. Who are they looking to replace those guys with? LSU, South Carolina, and Alabama offensive linemen from last year. That's who you're looking at? Those 3 offensive lines? Huge drop off. This offensive line is taking an enormous step back, maybe one of the biggest drops in the entire country. So what does that mean? And by the way, if you look at all of these offensive linemen they brought in, none of them can run block. Well, what does Texas A&M need to do for Reed? They need to run the ball because he is only effective in play action. Last year, he was pretty much the best quarterback in the country with play action: 17 touchdowns, 1 interception, 76% completion percentage with no play action, 7 big-time throws, 18 turnover-worthy plays, 55% completion percentage, 8 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. He was horrendous. He also was horrible under pressure. I mean, you look at his numbers when he was under pressure, they fall off a cliff. And by the way, if you remove the non-Power 4 teams off of the schedule last year, 18 big-time throws, 22 turnover-worthy plays. He just doesn't process the field well. All of his production came off of play action, and I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. I don't think teams are going to have to respect the run. It's going to be a more known passing situation. He's going to be under pressure where everything falls apart for him, and that's when the turnovers come. So I think their offense falls off a cliff. And, you lose Concepcion. I know you bring Bethel Roman and Craver back, but that's a big drop-off to me. Concepcion to Horton from Alabama? No. I know they have a ton of talent. A&M has a ton of money. There's a lot of talent on this team. But I think this offense, no Klein, offensive line falling off a cliff, which means the running game suffers, which means there's more pressure, which means the read mistakes come. And by the way, their offensive line, which was so elite last year, they started every single game, and Reed didn't miss any time. Is there any injury regression coming for this team? Because also on defense, 12 of their top 13 in snap counts played every single game. The only one who didn't played every game but one. So they had no injuries last year. No one got hurt. If Reed gets hurt, who you got coming in? A 3-star Brady Hart? It falls apart even more. So offense takes a big step back. Defense, it's Mike Elko. It should be good, but I think they're really going to miss York at linebacker. You're going to miss your top cornerback on the outside. Their nickel, which I think is a question, is they Chappell just signed with an NFL team. And then their interior defensive line. I mean, you obviously lost Cassius Howell, too, your sack leader and pressure guy. Is Saka going to replace him? I don't think so, but maybe. Onyedem, Regis, those guys were super underrated. Both went in the 3rd round. Did they replace? I mean, bring in Mims. Nah, you're gonna. York was so good for them, and you bring in Coney from Tulsa. Pretty big step up. I know he's very good for Tulsa, but yeah, I don't see it. I think in the trenches on both sides of the ball, this team takes a big step back. There's regression potentially all over. They were great in one possession games. Their third down defense was number one in the country at 23%. They got to face 7 of the bottom 9 teams in the SEC last year. The schedule was so easy. I mean, it's 6 other SEC teams last year finished with a winning league record. Texas A&M only played one of them, and they lost. Only 4 SEC home games under. This is a 7-5 team that doesn't sniff the playoffs.
Kendall Browse is not out-coaching Mike Elko. Come on.
South Carolina gets their revenge. Reed will be on crutches by then. All right. The offensive line is going to take you lose 4 offensive linemen to the NFL draft, 3 defensive linemen to the NFL draft, and the guys you replace them with, not seeing it.
Well, they get 3 free squares to start the season, so
don't sleep on Kenny Dillingham as a dog. You got to go Cutter Boley and then Cutter Boley's ex-team. Anyway, all right, you want to go head to head on that? Put it on the board.
At 8.5?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. All right, who have we hit so far? Georgia, Texas, Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M.
Your third best team. Why don't we do that?
Yeah, let's do, and then we'll finish this part 1 up here, and then we'll hit Tennessee and the rest, the other 9 in part 2. Let's talk some Oklahoma Sooners. Win total is sitting at 7.5, heavily juiced to the over. They are plus 185 to make the college football playoff, 22-1 to win the national title, 9-1 to win the conference. What is 7.5 to me is disrespectful. I know it's heavily juiced to the over, but what is not to like about this team? I mean, you have second year of this offense. Mateer's back and healthy. The running back room should be better. Lloyd Avant's getting – I loved him at Colorado State. He's getting rave reviews. Might be RB1. I think the tight ends are better pass catchers this year. The wide receivers, I love the addition of Harris. You bring in Livingstone. And then your boy Satania is back. Mm-hmm. And then I think the biggest jump on this team is their offensive line. You bring back 5 guys who started 6+ games last year. And there were so many freshmen that they were relying on and a lot of different combinations. They also bring in Harris from Arkansas, who might start at right tackle. He's not great, but a higher floor. They're still figuring out one offensive line position. The other 4 are locked up with returners. But I think this offensive line takes a big step. The running game will be better. The weapons on the outside are there. Mateer won't, second year in the SEC. He's reportedly cleaned up some of the footwork and his mechanics. But also was hurt.
4 years than that under in Arbuckle's system.
And everyone else now is second year, and this is a super young offensive line that was relying on freshmen. So I think this offense takes a big step forward, and then the defense. Yeah, they lost 4 to the NFL, but they're still elite all over. I mean, you even had Heineke, their linebacker, get a waiver to play this year, which means, and they brought in a Cole Sullivan from Michigan. So he's just now great depth. They might play him at the cheetah position. They're still trying to figure out the cheetah position. But look, your corners are loaded. Your safeties are loaded. The defensive line is loaded. Where is the weakness? Now, they're not as deep as last year. So they can't afford as many, a cluster injury, which they could have last year. So they're a little young in the depth department on defense. But even the special teams should be one of the best in the country as well. So, I mean, healthy Mateer, experienced offensive line that I think takes the next step. Second year in this offense, you're going to have the elite defense under Venables, great special teams. I mean, 3 of the starters back in the secondary started as freshman or sophomore. I think the defense is going to be one of the 5 best in the country. And what's not to like about this team? They do. The only thing not to like is the schedule. The schedule is one of the hardest in the country, and like there's a world where they're 3-3. So I mean, within the first 6 games, they play Michigan, Georgia, and Texas all away from home. So like Michigan week 2, huge swing game for their season. But then you're at Georgia, and then you play Texas on the neutral. I should say those are 3 of the first 5 games. So this is where they're 2-3. But then the schedule will lighten up a bit. Kentucky at Mississippi State, South Carolina at Florida, home against Ole Miss, home against A&M, at Missouri. If they can get out of the gates at 3-2 even, then I think this team is going 9-3 at worst. I think this is an over. I think they're worth a look in the futures market because I think they are the 3rd best team in the SEC. With that Texas brutal schedule, Sark's track record in big games, Oklahoma to make the SEC title, Oklahoma to make the playoff. If you want to get crazier, get a little crazier with Oklahoma. I think this team is a buy. What say you?
A year ago, well, I mean, it's been a couple years now. Back to Danny Stutzman Heisman run a couple years ago, right? That's the only thing that can make this team better is little Danny Stutzman.
Cash your tickets on a Danny Stutzman mention.
I absolutely was in love with this team last year and said Mateer playoff, all that good stuff, and then Mateer got hurt. And Mateer recently had some grip tests, which I didn't know there were scales out there for these grip tests. When he was cleared for Texas last year for Red River, his grip test came back at a 90. He had a grip test right before fall camp started. He registered at 150. He is completely healed, and he looks I said Julian Sayin was thick, and our great team at Action Network made a graphic for it. Julian Sayin ain't got nothing on what John Mateer is looking like these days. He looks like a transformer. Like it's insane how ripped he is. 3% body fat. I'm not sure. So Mateer is in the best shape that I've seen him in. If he still has the ability to do the plays that we saw at Washington State that got me all excited last year, then why are we not betting him for the Heisman? Of course, you and I don't bet for the Heisman as voters, but his number is 20 to 30 to 1 floating around there. They make the playoff again. They have a 10-2 season. He's in New York. And with all the OU voters that vote for the Heisman, there's at least 8 of them, right? And we'll hear Billy Sims chanting "Boomer" from the crowd. Whiteout Trell Harris, the Virginia, former Kent State. I mean, he joins 5 TDs, 2.2 yards per route run. There's a passing game here. There are some explosive players. The offensive line is 3rd in experience from a snaps perspective. Marion Harris is a big part of that. You're right. Very high floor, not an all-star, but he provides a lot. Now, the defensive tackle, David Stone, 26 pressures from the interior. Very impressive. Oklahoma was ranked top 10 in defensive rushing success rate, line yards, quality, and finishing drives on defense, and this unit might be better. That is a little bit scary. So,
yeah, they could be better. They're not as deep, but if they stay healthy, they could be better. Really, just the question is that other defensive end spot, replacing R. Mason Thomas and the plays that he made, but they have a couple guys that they could go for. Someone just needs to emerge as the guy. And then that cheetah position, which is important in the Venables defense, but they have guys. I'm curious, they might use Sullivan there, but this defense is loaded from start to finish, and the special teams are good. I think the offense takes the next step. I think this team is a threat to make some real noise.
Yeah, and in the Big Ten podcast, I took them to beat Michigan in the game of the year. Took the money line on that. There could be an argument made for Georgia, but this could be the best defense in the nation. So really, the best bet to make on this team is Oklahoma making the playoff plus 210. I think they're severely underrated in the win total market. I think they're severely rated in where they are in the pecking order of the SEC. I absolutely think
9-3 should get them in. I mean, obviously it depends on other things, but 9-3 with this schedule, they should get in.
The schedule's brutal, but they have the defense to absolutely shut everybody down.
No, I'm saying I think 9-3 they get in.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? Now, obviously, there are teams that are 10-2 and 11-1, but this 9-3 team would get in over some 10-2 teams based on the schedule.
I mean, look, I'm not putting it past them to go to Georgia and winning that game. Why? Because what does Georgia do? They just run the ball. OU's not going to have a problem with that. And there's no deep threats on Georgia's team. This team is heavily underrated. I mean, to make the playoff plus 210, I was surprised it was plus 210.
Georgia, Oklahoma, under city. All right. That'll do it for part 1. We'll summarize everything in part 2, and we'll hit the remaining 9 teams. But that'll cover Texas, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma. We'll hit the rest in part 2. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for Colin for joining me. Thanks to our producer, David. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Leave a 5-star review. Really helps us out this time of the year. We'll see you in part 2. Catch you all in a bit. Cheers.
Peace out.